Hi everybody, we are learning Daf Tzadi Zayin of Masechet Bava Kamma. By the time you're listening to this should be the middle of Pesach. I hope you had great Sidarim with your families and that you're enjoying Pesach, not eating too much matzah, and hopefully ready in a few days to put away your matzah for the rest of the year. So I wanted to talk about something short today, and that is about the coins and an interesting remark that Rashi makes. I wanted to talk about, so in the middle of the sugya over here, towards the end of it, actually, we read a braita, Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught, Ezuhu matbea shel Yerushalayim. What is the coin of Jerusalem? David ushlomo mitzad achad v'Yerushalayim v'ir hakodesh mitzad acher. David and Solomon on one side, and a picture of Jerusalem on the other side. Ve'ezu matbea shel Avraham Avinu. What is the coin of Abraham? Zaken uskena mitzad echad ubachor ubetura mitzad acher. An old man and woman on one side, and a young man and a young woman. That's nice, remembering Abraham and Sarah when they were young, on the other side. Now Rashi, commenting on the David and Solomon thing, says that the words David and Solomon were written on one side, and on the other side were written the words Jerusalem, the holy city. And the Tosfot say that the same thing about Abraham's coins. It didn't have a picture of old Abraham and old Sarah on one side and young Abraham and young Sarah on the other side. Rather, it had the words Abraham and Sarah when they're old on one side, and Abraham and Sarah young on the other. Now, obviously, I think you probably understand why Rashi and the Tosfot are saying this. According to the Torah, one is not supposed to make graven images, and images of human beings are particularly problematic. However, if you know anything about numismatics and you know anything about the history of coins, most coins do have pictures of kings and faces on them, including many Jewish coins that were found from the Second Temple period. It is not unusual at all. Now, that doesn't mean that the people who were making those coins were observing halacha the way they were supposed to, right? Just because the Gemara describes coins doesn't mean that these are halachically acceptable coins. However, I do think that probably if we look historically at that time period, we realize that people simply were not all that conscientious about the prohibition of making graven images. They were, I would assume, at least after the when the return to Zayin after the first exile, I assume that they were more scrupulous about not worshiping idols and images, but they don't seem to have had much of a problem whatsoever with the images themselves. When you go to ancient synagogues from these periods, you see that there are graphic description pictures of the forefathers, of Moses and Aaron, of animals, right? Every synagogue has these things. So you can see here that like Rashi is interpreting the Talmud because he wants there to be an observance of the prohibition of graven images in the time, certainly of David and Solomon. The time of Abraham and Sarah, it's a little less problematic because it was before the giving of the Torah. But nevertheless, they don't want to imagine their ancestors transgressing such a great prohibition. But as we know from history, right, we have other access to historical things, historical documents, historical artifacts that Rashi and the Tosfot clearly did not know of. And we know that they did make such things. And whether or not they consider themselves to be observing Jewish law in doing so, that is a question that scholars have been asking since the discovery of many of these ancient synagogues. So it's an interesting question, and it's an interesting comment by Rashi. I want to wish you a great end to your holiday, and I hope you'll join us for our live Daf Shvui learning, which will resume after Pesach is over.